bring in John Loudon and Patrice Leonwuka to discuss all of this. John, of course, is a former Missouri State Senator. Patrice is a senior policy analyst at the Independent Women's Forum. Good morning.
Good morning.
Patrice, there's this poll I want to talk to you about, both of you, but we'll start with Patrice. It's a Wall Street Journal NBC News poll. 41% of Americans say that this tax cut plan, it's a bad idea. That's up from 35% in October. I know it is tough to sell tax reform right out of the gate, and we've seen that in years and decades past, Patrice. But most people, a lot of people, are getting a tax cut. Why is this so unpopular?
Well, I think the media has done a great job in really painting this as a bad deal for middle-class Americans. However, the tax experts have come out with numbers saying that no, middle-class Americans will absolutely benefit from tax decreases, in 2018, 2019. And that 80% of American households will get a tax decrease is fantastic. You're talking about $2,100 on average because of this. So I think the more that we can get that message out is the more Americans will begin to understand, oh, this is going to be good for me, and it's going to be good right away.
John, the IRS says we could see this go into effect. We can see the real changes from tax cuts as early as February, which is 2 months away. Do you think that will help to change sentiment when people out there are saying, wow, I'm richer?
Oh, certainly. Chuck Schumer, it's like he had his talking points written before the bill was done. Whatever happened, he was going to say it was a giveaway to the rich and that the middle class wasn't going to benefit. Baloney. The first thing this thing was designed to do was to cut corporate taxes to stimulate the economy. That alone, that's the best raise you can get, is the next job or the greater income to your small business.
Yeah.
So this is just craziness on their part. It's just a consistency that the consistent partisan ugliness, and they're trying to throw a wet blanket on a really happy occasion. So,
yeah.
Baloney. This is great.
On the politics of growth, essentially. That's what we're betting on here. Patrice, when we talk about 2018 and the midterm elections, the struggles that we've seen with the repeal of Obamacare, even with this tax reform legislation, are these struggles going to make it more difficult in 2018? Let's say we do have tax reform under our belt, though, to do other things such as welfare reform or criminal justice reform.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a big win, and I think it will lift spirits, particularly among the Republican electorate who, are saying, we've put Republicans in White House and in Congress. What have you delivered to us? Well, they've delivered tax reform, which is great, excuse me, and they've delivered tax cuts. So now I think that gives them, Republicans, a little bit more of a bargaining chip to be able to say, hey, Democrats, if you want to come on board with something like, infrastructure reform, this is a good time for you to do that. So, I think going into the 2018 elections, it's going to be a challenge, but I think they're still at a slightly stronger footing than before.
And hopefully, as we just discussed, Americans will start to feel more positive about getting a tax cut. So it passed in the Senate. It did pass, this tax cut bill, in the House as well, although they do have to revote today. But you saw 12 Republicans voting no. 11 of them, John, are in blue states, right? What do you say to folks living in California, in Illinois, in New Jersey, in New York? What do you say to them right now? Because many of them will see their taxes go up because of the state and local tax reduction change.
Well, one thing I'd say is you might follow my lead and leave. I left California in September,
Wow.
So in August, actually. So I living in Florida now, I really kind of don't like the idea of still subsidizing Jerry Brown and his profligate spending. So I think it is time for people to look at their own states and say, hey, now that the federal government isn't subsidizing your irresponsible spending, you need to look at your own state legislature and make sure that they do some changes.
Sean, that's a scary thought, though. You're saying just leave? Do you see the governor? Do you see Jerry Brown or, Cuomo saying, okay, we're cutting property taxes, we're making it cheaper so you stay? Do you see that happening?
Well, I can't imagine that Jerry Brown is going to wake up tomorrow and see the light. But the general fairness of one state subsidizing the irresponsible spending of another is a problem. And I think a lot of Americans see it. Congress saw it, and that's what's reflected in the bill. And certainly for these members of Congress that live in those states, these Republican members, that's tough to see them have the least to gain out of this. But at the end of the day, everybody wins out of the corporate tax hike, because only in Nancy Pelosi's world do corporations pay taxes. They pass through to people. We all pay them.
Well, in the Nancy Pelosi world, this is a tax scam. John, Patrice, good to see both of you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.
You too.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you too.